go along too.
Okay, correct. So
Okay.
with further ado, Richard, we're good to go forward. I'll have two subjects that I'm going to focus on, not just Paraiba Tourmaline, but also a stone that's near and dear to me is the golden rutilated quartz. So you get two locations here, and let's go forward. Let's see, I have to figure out how to reduce that, doesn't matter. Okay, so quick geographical introduction here. Here is the important Western Pegmatite Province around Minas Gerais, southern Brazil, Espírito Santo, which contains most of the gems that we find from Brazil. This is a remote, obscure pegmatite field in Tocantins area. Up here, we see the Borborema Pegmatite Provence, where there's a plethora of minerals and gems. I'm actually adding the locations of the emerald mines in Brazil because we like green. There's no problem there. Where that copper just fell out of the sky indicates Padayuva, where the cuprian tourmaline was discovered. If you like diamonds, they're basically everywhere, and even beyond those boundaries, colored diamonds abound. This indicates the distance between the two locations that I work with most, Paraiba Mine and the area of the golden rutilated quartz, 860 kilometers as a raven flies. So let's start going from the coast of Bahia to the interior. Is about a 9-hour drive to where my rutilated quartz location is. And fortunately, after you cross an arid desert region, you go into some highlands, a plateau, the famous Chapada Diamantina, one of the most beautiful places in Brazil that I've experienced. And typically it's hot, and we stop at this wonderful swimming hole. And in this area, at the western edge of this Chapada Diamantina, is a remote village that was essentially founded in the early 1600s because of the original gold exploration in Brazil. There are gold veins in this area. This is the village of Remedios. This is where I stumbled into this area in 1983. That pyramid-shaped hill behind the village is a piece of land that my wife and I, who is Brazilian from Bahia, we purchased in 1987. It was basically handed over to us from the village elder, the important crystal dealer at the time. And that's kind of been the destiny. And that particular hill is where our mine is. Looking to the east, and you can see the pyramid in the center of the picture, we're at about 1,200 meters elevation. Looking to the north, forever. This is a clean, remote area. It's vast. This is one of the prizes from this mineral resource in this area. There happens to be gold, yes. There happens to be barite, which is mined also by the artisanal miners in the area, but principally it's quartz. And the stars that we're familiar with that are epitaxial to the hematite are from this region. They're from this place. Artisanal mining. It's a community that's near and dear to me. Artisanal is derived from art, the art of mining. And indeed, it goes back thousands of years. And essentially, it's how do you how do you extract minerals from difficult situations with little resource? So the art of putting things together so that you can mine this material. So what does it look like? Here we go. This is essentially a game of chutes and ladders. You go down ladders, you go down chutes, and you follow, you go deeper and deeper into the earth, following quartz veins. In this case, this happy team here are admiring quartz crystal, smoky quartz. It was approximately 800 kilo specimen. Soon after this, I asked them, well, how are you going to get it out of here? So much to the demise and unhappiness, they had to figure out how to drag this out via chutes and ladders, which was a real task. But it highlights, the difficulties in mining artisanally. Large crystals from this mountain range appear in this iconic crystal, fabricated, manufactured, cut, polished by my friends Lawrence and Glenn. It now hangs in the GIA Museum, or in the lobby actually. But that's from the same mountain range. Artisanal mining around the world looks a lot like this. Here we see many tents which are situated close to a shaft that goes straight down. And each shaft has a team of partners, men mostly, but in some cases women, organize themselves traditionally, how they divide the expense, the cost, and how they share what they find. The landowner gets a cut, the person supplying the energy gets a cut, the person supplying equipment gets a cut, and the garimperos is sweat equity, and it's all divvied up according to tradition. And this is pretty standard around the world. When you come to an area like this as a stranger, you need to approach these folks with respect. If you have a nice camera and you're friendly, then you're in. Now, this is some photos from I think more or less the late 1990s. And you can see he's on a rope with a stick going down. At this time, this was a shaft about 20 meters deep. And you see the cable going in. That is the first introduction of energy via a diesel generated electricity. So they had the first bit of illumination in these mines. Prior to that, it was candlelight. But each additional upgrade adds cost to mining for these people. This is a decade-ish or more later. Still, the resources artisanally figured out the same method, basically, a hand winch, hand operated. So things didn't change much, except by now, the introduction of safety equipment, which I introduced through my mining, is now pretty prevalent through the region, although they're still lacking with some of the miners. If anybody is interested in ecotourism, here we go. Got a nice kitchen situation here. But I'm showing these photos so you get a feeling for what it's like in these camps and out in remote areas. Now the prize is high grade rutilated quartz, which Rutile occurs in quartz around the planet, mostly in small amounts. But in this locality, Madagascar, you get economic quantities. But the golden rutile associated with the hematite and the stars is famous from this mountain range. Once in a blue moon, you get really special specimens. And because it's super difficult for these miners to bring these things up to the surface without damaging, and then transport, and then processing, and getting it to me or out of the country, however it's done. It's really a very small fraction of specimens that make it out. This is an incredible specimen. The area has amazing hematite, mirror finish on the crystal face. So mineral specimens from this area are highly desirable, and along with the cut stones. The process of getting it out of the holes, then you go to processing, which is sorting and washing, looking for great material like this piece, very great. The cutting is the next process. So great skill is required in cutting rutilated quartz, because you have to try and highlight the best features of the stone. And to do that, you have to sacrifice other parts of the stone usually. So it's a real interesting process of cutting rutilated quartz. It's one of the advanced crystals for figuring out how to cut, and along with emerald. Emerald's another very difficult stone to figure out. So we can cut one-off, very special stones. This is New York City scape. And this was one of my favorite stones that I cut. And from Central Park, I did find a location where I looked and saw something like that. Okay, I'm imagining, but it was like that. When we do some really fine cutting and do suites and pairs, we can come up with some high-end jewelry, very fine jewelry. We also like haute couture. Haute couture is Jackie Aishi in Beverly Hills likes to work with some of our large stones, which are chunky, powerful, and she utilizes them. Wonderful. I want to show these ugly stones. They're beautiful to many people, but I wanted to do a shout out to the scientists in the world that work with us and bring so much value of information to our world. So quickly, I'll just say that from this locality, we have specimens, almedaite, which was named by our old friend Louise Menezes, which is, and we have other minerals, parasites, and monazite, xenotime. These are rare earth minerals. So there's yttrium, cesium, lanthanum. So these are all interesting associated minerals that occur in the same area, which attest to the very interesting chemistry happening in the volcanic rocks. And again, in my lectures, I always want to give a shout out to science that kind of holds things together, keeps us all organized. And this is our friend George Rossman, diligently working on one of those ugly rocks to figure out and put it in one of his marvelous magic machines like the Wizard of Oz, and come up with all the unusual elements that are in that mineral. So A shout out to science. The polygonal there delineates my claim, which is 50 hectares. Took me 12 years to legalize and formalize this area, and then another 3 years to get my environmental license. And in the process of helping the locals, this was very instrumental, very key, because once I went through that whole process, I was able to help other local landholders legalize and formalize their areas. And this is in our mine, the Pyramid Mine. This is some years back. This is an entrance gallery. And you can see our operation is a bit cleaner, even though today we have straight down shafts, which looks similar to the others, but much better equipment. But what's interesting, if you look at how we cut these tunnels in here and these walkways following the quartz veins, again, working with the local, state, federal government to help formalize is essential in helping the locals become legalized rather than marginalized. So here we are following a smoky quartz vein. And it dips slightly, and what we're finding is that most of the veins have this orientation of dipping to the northeast at a low angle, 18 degrees. And maybe there's something to this. And then there's other veins and stockworks. But see, there has to be a study here. There has to be a structural geological study here that eventually would, if we can create 3D models of what's going on, it's going to help us understand how our deposits happen. So we follow this quartz vein, and you follow it, and eventually maybe you get a vug and an area where you get quartz. And then you have to carefully extract it. This is rutile in clay with no quartz, which is a very interesting phenomenon and very precarious if it gets in your fingers. It's a splinter. And I'm going to show this. This is the excitement of finding. Yeah. So this is such a great little clip because it shows the excitement of someone finding something valuable. And sometimes you look for weeks, months, years to find something like this. So it's very emotional. It's just thrilling. Now this is about, I think this is about 40 meters underground here. And this is in the Pyramid Mine. You know, so the women also participate. They collect stones off the tailings. They process. They have their own stones, and there's a weekly auction that happens, and they get to bring their stones and sell it. And it's a very important component in the community. It's a resource, and women handling money is much better handled. So it's very important for the family. Let me put it that way. Old people. I like old people. I like their stories. I like their knowledge. I hope that we can begin to document a lot of their stories, which go back to times that we're beginning to forget. So this is part of my interest in the community and the people, and it connects to the stone. And this is part of my project with my initiative in the area, is that, you know, connecting the people, the community, the land with the stone is how we can create stories that connect the stone for the end user. It's a big part of what our industry is discussing at the moment. The people generally happy in the area. Obviously, I think it has to do with the climate and the clean air and the simple lifestyles. It also possibly has something to do with this distillery down the valley, which this gentleman has 2 hectares of sugar cane, and every year he harvests and he crushes it and distills it into the local cachaça, a very high-grade sipping cachaça, and this is part of the culture. And I think culture is part of the story behind the stone, the people, the land, the culture. This is when we produced some stones, and we found some stones, and we worked through the night because everyone was so excited, but also because for security reasons. And then by the morning, the ladies from the village, old and young, came up, and this is how they're gathering stones and processing, chatting away, having a great time. And everything they find, they keep, it's theirs. And I would like to create a Lepidaria Academy in this region. I'm going to create it so that we can add value to these stones and even give employment to folks that have an affinity for working with stones, give the opportunity. It's part of the initiative that I'm working on. So it's a place, it's far away. It could be anywhere in the world where there's an artisanal mining community, depending on the resource of those stones. The initiative that I'm putting together that is actually going forward has to do with helping these communities bring economic sustainability and also sustainability for the long term. And I'm doing that through the Lepidaria Academy and also education in regenerative agriculture. And that's a whole nother story, but this is what's happening in this place. And then, you know, as we go forward, and again, get my emails, and these projects are going forward, and we need support from the world, from people interested in this, from the communities, from the jewelry industry. But within our industry, it's become one of the top subjects. Responsibly sourced stones. How does it connect to the communities? What's the benefit? What's the use? So these stories and these initiatives are becoming more and more important in our industry. So let's say goodbye, wave goodbye to the Rutilated Quartz area. And we go, as Elaine mentioned, the Paraiba Tourmaline showed up in Tucson for the first time, debuting. It was 1990. And it was kind of blowing everyone's mind. How can this be? What is this? How did that? A lot of people say, no, there's something wrong. It's not real. But essentially, before the naming of the stone Padayuva, or cuprian elbaite, or Padayuva type / Mozambique / Nigeria, it was this. It was a color that we love in a hard gem, and the first time it happened. You're looking at a crystal from the original mine. You're seeing the nuances of chemistry. The core of the crystal, there's more manganese, creating the purple. And as it grew and expanded, the manganese just disappeared. And you're looking at pure copper beauty in a hard gem. So let's do a little bit of basic gemology. Here's a collection of stones that are all untreated, all unheated, crystals and gems. You see a variety of hues. It was type locality means a place where a specimen or gem or mineral was first described. So the Batalha Mine in Padayuva is the type locality for cuprian elbaite. And we know that it is such because of the element copper, and then manganese also, which creates the red. So you have the purples and the combination of the two. If you heat the stone, and there's a lot of questions about it, if you heat the stones, the manganese component, chromophore, is reduced, and that color disappears, yet the copper does not. So only copper remains. But as you see in this collection, all the hues, the range of hues and everything in between is remarkable. Not heated. So again, just a geographic. On the bottom in Bahia, to the bottom left is the Rutilated Quartz area, and at the other end is the Padayuva deposit. So I migrate between those 2 points a lot. I don't go as a crow flies, but it's very interesting. So this is about 100 meters above the earth, looking down at the Padayuva area. You see here in a line, those 3 marks, the 4 marks. Here is the original discovery, the Batalha Mine. In 1991, a second discovery occurred to the north, across the border in Rio Grande do Norte, that's about 60 kilometers away, was another cuprian tourmaline deposit. And then several years later was a third deposit, which Mr. Adario was involved in. And further to the north is another mine that has spessartine. And notice how they all line up. So in theory, they're all in the same formation. The Ecuador formation, it's a quartzite. Outside of that thin band of quartzite, it's about a 300-meter thick sequence. But to the right and left and up and down is a sea of schist. There's no cuprian tourmaline. However, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of pegmatite. That line shows, you can see in the earth, there's this long, there's this lineation headed to the east. That lineation is a huge shear zone, and it continues in Nigeria, the same shear. Just for reference, there is cuprian tourmaline in Nigeria. So Rio Grande do Norte and Padayuva, you can see the boundary through that. This is the Batalha Mine. And this small area, which is just 1 kilometer across that oval, that is where all the Paraiba Tourmaline from the original mine has come from, in that little area. This photo I took, and it was the first ever published photo of the mine. And you can see the hill in the distance. That's the village of São José da Batalha. Here's a historical photo of our team when we mapped this. Myself, my buddy in the middle is a great geologist, Hui Lima. The gentleman in the yellow shirt, I think he's 19 at the time, is the current owner of the original mine. That is Sergio Barbosa, that is the son of Heitor. So Heitor and Sergio are the owners of the original mine. So we're looking west here, and you can see the mine in the distance. You see the tilted rocks, stratigraphy of the quartzites from the left to right. It's a huge anticline. We're looking down the core of the anticline. It's a very arid region most of the year. That's why it looked all brown, gray. This is the first map I drew. Here you see the hill with the 4 principal veins. This is showing all the shafts at the time. On those veins, we used a rope as a measuring device, a 10-meter rope. We paced it out, and that's basically how I drew this. Talk about artisanal. Here we go. This is using the local elements. You have sticks and rope. You have bits of tire, rigging up the how you haul the haulage. You know, there was many shafts, and like this, and adits and galleries, and following the veins. And here you see a shot. I love this photo because it really gives you the impression of what it was like. That's 45 meters down to the bottom, so over 150 feet. And to go down hand over hand on that rope, I had to take my shoes off because they were slipping out of the little toe hole. Very amazing. So that was the way down. You can see you can see the pegmatite. You can see the wall rock. Truly an amazing feat. ATOR started in 1982. It wasn't until 1988 that the first signs of the copper color began to emerge. These shafts and galleries and rifts following the veins allowed air circulation through this mine. Every time I went there, it was incredible to feel the airflow, even at the depth. It was amazing. And here's the prize. Stones of these colors. Amazing, amazing, amazing. As Elaine said, truly fantastic, mind-altering colors. Some of the early pieces, you can see a range of crystal colors. Today, these would be worth a fortune. So by 1990, there was a lot of strife around the mine, a lot of contention and battle for ownership. This is a security, hired security, with wrapped in the towel is a sawed-off shotgun. This is the lawyer. This is the hired security. Here's ATOR with his apples. It was a very interesting time, this period, 1989 through the 90s. It was quite dangerous. But let's go to the stones. You see the stone in my fingers, between the two fingers. No heat, natural color. The electric color is natural. The two large crystals in the foreground, those were grayish. Those heated would eliminate the manganese, and would turn into some of the most valuable gems you could obtain today. Heating those, they would go electric. And those were large, the one on the right, clean. The greens from Padayuva are some of my favorite greens on earth. Here's a beautiful specimen etched on one side, the other side is terminated. So it's a beautiful crystal. Again, you see the rich saturation of color, distinct from the Batalha Mine. No other mine in the world has the saturation of the original mine. Very few specimens from that mine. The crystals are broken, they're etched. but occasionally you get a little specimen. This one had a beautiful trigonal termination at the tip, not very big. Also distinct from this locality in the world, only from here do we find the crystals that have elemental copper. Sort of like the sunstones from Oregon, which have elemental copper schiller. These crystals, you would find copper, and the right angle, you would get the flash off it. So as far as I know, it's the only location of cuprian tourmaline that has the copper. And it was only one particular area, one zone that had these green crystals. And what's interesting is the crystal itself does not show the neon colors, yet it contained the elemental copper. I did see one stone that had the elemental copper schiller, and John Koivula took this photo, and I didn't even see that until he took this photo. It was in a 11 karat amazing stone. Here's a great specimen, and I show this because you see in the AB axis a beautiful blue-green, but down the C axis is this intense indigo color that in natural light and holding it up and looking through the C axis, I have to say it is mind altering. It is really a mind-piercing blue. And that's part of the fame of these crystals, is that people that have seen stones at this level, there's an unexplainable charm, there's an unexplainable charge and beauty to those stones. Here's one specimen I kept in my collection. Unfortunately, I sold all the others. But this, I like it because it is quartz on Padayuva. I wish I could say it was a small cabinet, but it's not. It's actually, it might be half a thumbnail, but I love it. So here you go. Here's from the original line. None of these are heated. These were all preformed by a tour and then faceted. And it just shows the variety of hues, the richness of color, the intensity. But people ask, do you have to heat Padayuva to have that color? No. There you see it. It's all a matter of the amount of manganese that is in one stone or another, but none of these are heated. So some of those dark stones, which would be the most rare today, because most of the stones were heated to make it more the electric, more popular, but the really deep blues are more rare because there were fewer to begin with, but also a lot of them were heated to bring out the more electric color. In my work and in my journey, I've been experimenting with Lepidaria Art. This is one of my pieces that I'm quite proud of. It's a sculpture. It's rock quartz crystal. I've embedded within it a range of hue of Paraiba Tourmaline. It has a base of aquamarine, so you can see how the aqua rolls up into the tip and swirls around. Some of the work that we do, nature's geometry. Amazing pieces are fabricated with Paraiba Tourmaline. This is a very, it's one of my favorite pieces. And for scale, the center, the eye of the parrot is 9 carats. This is one of our creations. And you can see, we call this a wheel of light. Now, the side stones of Paraiba Tourmaline are from the mine in Rio Grande do Norte. When you see these accessory stones that are used a lot in watches today, and a lot of the couture jewelry that is able to even acquire Nelly, comes from the mine that's in Rio Grande do Norte. And it's very consistent in color. And that's another lecture, but that's another locality that we call Paraiba Tourmaline because it's in Brazil, even though it's across the border, but it's part of the same formation. This I'm going to show you because this is an older video clip I took, but it gives you some dimension of the size of this vein, the dike. So it's near vertical. It's probably 70-degree dip. It's massive, worked by hand. The feldspars have all been altered to kaolin clay, so you can actually work it with chisels, hammers, and points. And this is how a lot of the mining occurred throughout the 90s. By this time, there was already electricity. Previous, it was all by candlelight. And so a lot of material was moved, but the veins or occurrence of the tourmaline is in such tiny little amounts, and a pocket, unlike in Minas Gerais, a pocket here might be the size of your fist. So they're very rare. Now I climbed up on a cliff to look down to get this view and get this shot. This is 1990. Remember those, I told you we mapped all those shafts. At the far bottom right, there's a tiny little man standing on that pile. That's Hui, who helped me do this. I don't even know if you can see it, but there's a man standing on that pile. Imagine all that material dug by hand, by candlelight, and hauled up on ropes. This was how it was originally mined. Here's the same location 10 years later. By that time, the stone was so famous, so desirable. Every scrap, crumb, bit and piece was worth a lot. So the hill was literally scraped to the bone, straight to the bedrock. And so as we went forward in time, the original dike, the main dike, began to collapse. Later, work began in a new section farther across this drainage. You can see there's a shaft in the background. That was the neighbors invading, going into Heitor's property, and it snuck in and started mining there. So Sergio immediately dug straight down to intercept that. The signs began appearing of cuprian tourmaline. Around 2008, 2009, indeed, there were some good signs. Here's a crystal, beautiful crystal. Again, notice down the C-axis of the color. Well, because of that, the neighbors got all riled up and everybody began getting a bit intense. So the governor sent these guys out to calm things down. It worked, it was good. That was Heitor. That's Heitor, by the way. Okay. In 2014, I led a team from GIA to do a report on Paraiba Tourmaline. So we visited the mine in Rio Grande do Norte, and I arranged everything and arranged for Heitor to come to be there because he wasn't hanging out there by this time. His son told him, no, go home. It's too dangerous for you. So he came up especially to meet with us. And it was a really nice team. It was Duncan Pace, Shane McClure, Pedro, the videographer, and Andy Lucas. So we had a great team. And it was a great report. You can find it on the GIA website. So, so that was Andy up in front of me. Now, Andy was the only person of the group that would go down, because at this point, this is 70 meters deeper than ever before mined in the Padayuva mine. And this is the neighbors. These are the guys that had invaded Aitor's property, but this is on their side. Notice that at this depth, the water is seeping in, precarious. So they used timbers, and it's smelly. It was really interesting. But Andy Lucas, fearless, came down, did some good filming. It was great. Now, here's a picture of a piece of feldspar. I take this picture because previously, everything above the feldspar was altered to kaolin. At this depth, we're beginning to see the feldspar not altered to kaolin. So at depth, it will begin to turn into a hard rock mine, which is more expensive, obviously, and also there's water to deal with. But I think that's an interesting point here. Here's the man. This is Aitor. Those are two significant gems. Those size stones and those qualities, you could hold maybe in both your hands the total amount that exists. So people that have gems cut from that quality in larger sizes, 10 carat plus, have one of the rarest stones on earth. So fast forward a couple of years ago, new investments, legal battles resolved. Aitor and Sergio hold the only legal claim on the original mine. It's finally been certified through the federal government, investments, cleaning up the original dike. This is in the dike. You can see on the left, the brown is what infill, but you can still see original to the right is the light colored pegmatite up against the wall rock of quartzite. When you do a mining operation, anywhere you can find money helps cover costs. Here is a gravity operated jig to separate tantalite. So tantalum being very valuable. Any little bit of tantalite that comes out is good. Recycle water. Here's the beginning of punching in a huge tunnel that will give access 40 meters below the original mine, cross-cutting the dikes. Beginning to put in a circular elevator shaft. So this was 2 years ago. I haven't been back since. I'm anxious to get back. But when I was there, this bit of water showed up, and the rainbow happened to end right on top of the point where the new mine is going to happen. And I took that as a good omen. And I'm looking forward to what develops in the next year. So that concludes this little talk. And again, please note my Instagram, my email. I don't have my number in here, but you can contact me. I will be in Southern California in a couple weeks, and I would love to meet with anybody that's interested in perhaps gemstones, rutilated quartz specimens. Perhaps someone can help organize a small gathering. It'd be great. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to educate, tell tall tales, and have fun. Hopefully it was informative and enjoyable. Are there any tomatoes thrown on anybody's screen? Okay, that's great. And so I would like to see some of the questions. if we could maybe go back to the general community so we can all interact, that would be great.
This is Richard speaking.
Yeah.
So people were asking, will this be recorded? Yes, it's been recorded. What we do is we edit it and we post it onto our website. So anybody who wants to see this is available. They asked a basic question, what are the names of the other minerals that are found within the pegmatites? So is it just the Paraiba
Yeah, well,
tourmalines,
okay.
or are there other gems that are found side by side?
There's other minerals, yes. There's quartz, obviously. The quartz in pegmatites is normal. At the Paraiba mine, there is citrine. There is amethyst, which is an indicator mineral. There is lepidolite, often richly colored pink, which, as you know, in San Diego is very common in pegmatite. There has been a spessartine found in there, but not in any commercial quantities. There has been gannite, which is a zinc green colored spinel as an accessory mineral. And in this particular mine, tourmaline of all colors have been found. In fact, before Heitor discovered the cuprian colors, he went through 7 years of encountering lettuce color, Coca-Cola color, ugly tourmalines, etc. Things that he could not make money out of, but nonetheless, at different levels in the mine, different colored tourmalines did appear.
Brian?
Yes.
What the value of, let's say, a lavender colored Paraiba tourmaline, or even in the emerald green color, comparable to, let's say, the neon blue? Is there a value to them? Not quite as much though, right?
Well, based on our experience in the market, the blues and neon blues and the deep blues command the highest prices.
Right.
Lavenders, I find extremely exciting. And in my opinion, some of the greens I've seen from
They're beautiful.
Padayuva, you like electric blue, man, there's electric green. And I think those are totally as valuable. They're actually a little more rare and harder to find than the blues. So, but what my experience in the market is that from the fame and the desire and the
right
demand, it's the blues, and indeed they are remarkably beautiful.
They're gonna be the ones that are gonna.
But I'll tell you what, personally, I've seen some greens that just knock my socks off. Obviously, it's like just electrified, blazing green with a hint of blue. I mean, come on. It's as good as, they're all good in my book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a name that comes to mind when I'm thinking, have you ever heard of something called Fazenda dos Quintos?
Fazenda dos Quintos, right. So in the map that I showed of the 3 cuprian occurrences.
I was looking for that and I didn't see it.
Okay, well, the Batalha Mine was the first to the south. The second discovery was to the north in Parelhas. That's in the literature, it's Mulungu in the article we wrote. And then between those two is the Quintos. And that's the one, okay. That is the mine that the Ranieri Adario first began to develop. It's the mine that the Paul Wild company bought and produced a lot of cuprian tourmaline.
Okay, no wonder we didn't hear about it.
So from somebody asked another question, Brian. They wanted to know, how can you tell if a tourmaline has been heated versus it's naturally occurring? Is there any signatures in the stone that you can tell if one
Only,
is heated?
yeah. Yes and no. If it's a very, very clean stone, I don't think you can really tell. Now, I'm not a I'm not a gemologist expert and look at a lot of stones in that sense. But often in heated stones, there could be a telltale sign of strain, a very slight, inclusion or something. You can see these little strain features in stones. In the totally flawless stones, you wouldn't see those, obviously. But as I demonstrated through the first photos that shows the range of hue, all the colors that you see in Padayuva can occur naturally, including the electric neon turquoise.
Yeah.
And then generally, somebody asked, what is the difference between the Brazilian stones that came to market versus the current ones that are coming out of Africa?
Chemically, there's very slight nuances which take sophisticated analysis to detect. But in general, this is what I say. The saturation from the original mine can get beyond any other mine in the world. So the intense colors, the top intense colors come from Batalha. Now, I've seen astounding and amazing stones from Mozambique. And some of those stones can be quite saturated. But what you do notice is that often you need a large stone from Mozambique to create enough depth of color. And you can have a 50 carat stone from Mozambique of top color that's amazing and beautiful. And you can have a chip from Padayuva that will have the same intensity of color. But if you took a chip off of the Mozambique stone, it would be super pale.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about saturation.
Makes sense.
So large stones from much larger stones have come from Mozambique in general, and Mozambique has provided a lot more quantity for the market. So it's been a great resource. But for the real connoisseur, the real collector, to get your hands on a Batalha stone with that crazy saturation, that is the true rarity. And therefore, those stones command much higher prices.
So is that original mine still producing?
It's not, no, it's not produced for a long time, mainly because there was decades of strife and battle and contest for control of the mine.
Mm-hmm.
So for those, and as I pointed out, it's only recently that those issues have been resolved legally. And it's only very recently that a bit of investment has begun to clean up the old mines with the prospect of seeing what is there. Let me state, there has never been any serious prospecting investigation on this mine. It has been artisanal from the beginning till now, which kind of blows my mind that one of the most valuable stones in the world is still in that state. But again, it has a lot to do with all the problems that were around it for so long. And therefore, any investor is going to shy away from those kinds of problems.
Right. Well, I think that we've reached an end of the questions. Thank you again so much for joining us and illuminating us. I hope that members take down this email address. It's bc@naturesgeometry.com. Again, Brian has indicated that he will be in town over the 4th of July week. And hopefully he'll know more of his schedule and how he can meet with you, the audience. So anyway, unless otherwise, I'm going to
Thank you.
end this session. Unless, Brian, you have anything more that you would like to discuss.
No, well, it's great. It's been a privilege to share knowledge. Again, you know, our company, we're involved in a lot of aspects of the industry, from production to cutting, etc. And our business is selling what we make. So I encourage anyone that wants to get in touch with us about that, please do. And I recently created an Instagram because I have to, not necessarily, you know, being dragged kicking and screaming into the Instagram world, but I'm happy to be there, and it's at Golden Rutilated Quartz, so you can find me there. But again, thanks for the opportunity to share my knowledge. That's what I'm about.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again on behalf of the club.
Oops, where am I?
So Brian,
Yes.
thank you very much for a very interesting program. That rutile stuff is pretty interesting too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
So you're still involved pretty deeply into that, I guess?
Daily.
As
Right.
it
Yeah.
carries, you love that, right?
Oh yeah, we'll have to talk when you get into town.
Yeah, please do. Just email me and we'll get connected, okay?
We'll do
I
that,
appreciate
no
it.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much for tonight's program.
Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
really
We
wonderful.
appreciate it.
Bye, Brian.
All
bye,
right.
bye.
I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and
Ciao bello.
be good.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao. Ciao, bye. All right. Enjoy.